Well, hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Bracy Sports Media Podcast. My name is Aaron Bracy and I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where I just finished a long day at the Atlantic 10 Media Day, both men's and women's basketball. Really great day. Got to talk to a lot of people, both on and off the record. The press conferences were streamed live on ESPN+, so you might have seen or heard some of my questions. I'm also streaming this podcast live on my Instagram for the first time. If anyone on my Instagram feed has any questions or comments about Atlantic 10 basketball, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will try to answer them on the podcast. You can find the Bracy Sports Media Podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Aaron, AARON_Bracy. And you can follow me on Facebook, Bracy Sports Media. And hashtags I use on social media are Big Five Hoops, hashtag 0304 St. Joe's Book, hashtag A Soaring Season, and hashtag Philly Sports. Real quick on the book, I am expecting to have final proofs back by Friday of this week or early next week. So that's the final step in the process for the book. It's going to come out March 1st. Really excited. A lot of cool things happened today for the book. I talked to a lot of people about it. Some people I'm going to be sharing the book with. Actually, Cindy Griffin gave me a shout out on her press conference, which was kind of cool. And so, yeah, really excited. One of the reasons why I wanted to come down today, besides talking to the Atlantic 10 coaches and players, was to talk a little bit about the book. And so I feel like that was a success. So really excited for the book to come out. And if you haven't followed me today, you know that I started my morning at, or you don't know if you haven't followed me. If you do follow me, you know. But if you haven't, you don't know. I started my morning at, got up at 3 a.m. For a 4:45 train from 30th Street. I get to 30th Street about 4:15, maybe a little before that. And I'm sitting on the bench and just kind of on my phone, kind of half awake. I look up just about before we're about to board, and who's sitting right across from me but Phil Martelli. He also was boarding the 4:45 a.m. train to D.C., where he was going to do studio today, analysis and interviews. So it was really cool to bump into him like that, and just to talk a little bit about, we talked Phillies and just some general stuff, but I also pulled him in a little bit on the book. I did not ask him any questions. I think I've kind of had my fill of questions with him, although I still have a lot more I'd like to ask him. But that was a cool way to start the day. Got to Union Station about a little before 7. Took the metro to a few stops to the Capital One Arena where they held the press conferences. And the press conference started at 9 o'clock this morning with Davidson, and they just finished up about 15 minutes ago with George Mason. So long day, a couple breaks. So I'm going to kind of recap the press conferences as best I can, going through my notes. I'm going to start with the local angles. LaSalle and Fran Dumpy were picked again to finish last in the Atlantic 10 in the preseason media poll. Also were picked to finish last year in the preseason media poll and did not finish last. Were a very tough out. In my poll, I picked LaSalle to finish 13th. So that question came up in the press conference to Fran Dumpy, and basically, to paraphrase, he said that, well, I can read the quote exactly. He said, "We don't talk about that too much. Our number one priority is we are ready to go. Let's play the best basketball that we can. We want to be the best team we can be." He went on to say how he thinks the conference is terrific. So I think that LaSalle, I would be surprised if LaSalle finishes last. I think they're being voted on their reputation, but I think LaSalle has some talent that people don't really know about. And Fran Dumpy seems like almost like not overly optimistic, but he seems very optimistic about what he has. And this is from a veteran coach who's seen everything, been through everything. Again, he spoke today glowingly about Eric Hacker, who's a sophomore point guard they got from Long Island. And he just seems very, very optimistic. Here's what Fran Dunphy said about Eric Acker. He said he's a talented young man. He plays with a great pace. I think he has a great future in front of him. He does everything well. Now it's just a matter of putting it together. A lot is going to be expected of him. Really, Fran Dunphy's very excited about the team. Also spoke about some off-the-court stuff and how Andres Marrero took a leadership role with the team yesterday. Andres, Eric Acker, and Demetrius Lilly went out to a young, I'm not sure if it was a young man or a young woman. I don't recall Fran Dunphy saying it, but it was a wheelchair basketball player. They hung out at the player's house, shot jumpers with the player, and Fran says the kind of thing that it means a lot to him. Those are the things that make you better as a basketball team and certainly better as a human being. Also for LaSalle today, they brought to the podium Andres Marrero, their shooting guard, who missed a lot of time last year with injury, but is expected to have a really good season. I talked to Fran Dunphy a couple of weeks ago about what Andres needs to do and how he needs to get off screens. And Andres just seems very optimistic about this season. And he of the ranking, he said he's excited to prove people wrong. We want to be the best version. This is what he said. We want to be the best version of ourselves. We've already proven in years before that it's a really good conference, but we've proven that we can compete against any team. I'm ready to go. So it sounds to me like LaSalle is going to use that number 15 preseason ranking as sort of a chip on their shoulder. And I would be very surprised if LaSalle finished last in the conference. So that's the LaSalle story. The other local in the Atlantic 10 obviously is St. Joseph's. I'm scrolling down through my notes. Billy Lang and Eric Reynolds II were here. I did get a chance to talk somewhat extensively with Billy Lang, which was nice. I actually talked a bit to Billy about his wife, Alicia, who was a big part of my book on 2003-04 St. Joseph's. Alicia was, I don't know her direct title off the top of my head. She was like an academic coordinator. She was very influential with Delonte West and several other players in helping them, not just academically, but personally, during obviously a very important development part in somebody's life. And so we talked a little bit about that, but it was nice to just chat with Billy for a bit. And then while he was up there, he talked a lot about the expectations of the season. St. Joseph's is picked third in the conference, behind VCU and Dayton, and just ahead of St. Louis and Loyola Chicago. Those are the 5 teams that I expect to be the top tier of the conference. Out of those 5 teams, I think certainly 2 and possibly 3 of those teams are NCAA tournament candidates. Actually, I think all 5 are candidates. I would expect certainly 2, possibly 3 of those 5 teams to make the NCAA tournament. And of course, you never know. You could have a dark horse candidate like last year. Duquesne won the A-10 tournament and made their first NCAA tournament since 1977, winning a first-round game against BYU. So we'll see about that. But certainly St. Joseph's has high expectations this year with backcourt of Xavier Brown, Eric Reynolds II, Derek Simpson, who transferred from Rutgers, Rasheer Fleming, Rasheer Haskins. So a lot of talent, expectations, and hope on Hawk Hill. Billy Lang seems to, he's not running away from expectations, but he's not, I guess he's not jumping up and down about them either. His message is that he's focused on the moment, he's focused on the day. I hope you can hear me okay. They're just breaking down some science. I think they just have 1 or 2 more science to go here. But Billy Lang is very much focused on the day. Jonathan Tannenwald kind of twice pressed him on expectations, and Billy didn't really go there too much with the expectations. He said expectation is not even a word that I use. It's daily, it's day to day. For us, every day is the same day. He says we're not blind to it, but we have our own goals, and we try not to focus on outside things. If you have a comment you'd like to leave on Instagram Live, feel free to drop it. I can respond to it as best I can as I'm recording the podcast. Eric Reynolds II also talked about how excited he is to be back near his hometown from the DMV, and also how excited he is for the Atlantic 10 Conference Tournament to be played here at the Capital One Arena, not too far from where he played his high school ball. So excited to be home. I asked Eric Reynolds about things that he can improve. Obviously, this is a guy who's preseason first team all-conference. He was closing in on the St. Joseph's scoring and three-point record. Seth Greenberg, an ESPN commentator who was here today, called Eric Reynolds one of the best guards in the country. Obviously, he has the talent, the accolades, but there are also some things that he wants to work on and become even better. I asked him what those were. He talked about defense. He really wants to work hard this season of getting over screens more efficiently. He wants to build up his strength, something Billy Lang said that he has actually done. He's put more time in the weight room, and he wants to get his shot off quicker, if that can be believed. I think Eric Reynolds second has one of the quickest shots I've seen in college basketball. He wants to get it off even quicker, and he said that Billy Lang focuses on him finishing tall, and he wants to also focus on the small details. Shout out to everyone who's joining me on Instagram Live. I'm recording a podcast here from the Capital One Arena after a long day of interviews at the Atlantic 10 Media Day. I'm just kind of ripping on through some of my notes. I hope you can hear me okay. Thanks to John Nalbone, Jason Melroy, Gabe Bracy. Who else is on here? Thanks to everyone who's on the Instagram Live. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Hope you can hear me okay. I have the AirPods for the phone and the microphone for the podcast, so hopefully the sound is okay. Not the quietest place. I found about the quietest place I could, which isn't saying much because they are breaking things down here, so it's a bit noisy in the background. But about St. Joseph's a little bit more. Interestingly, Billy Lang talked about one thing Eric Reynolds would like to see him do more this year is not just getting into the paint, but being aggressive and making good decisions once he gets there. Getting through the first line of defense outside the three-point line, and then making good decisions from that point. So obviously hopes are high at St. Joseph's for good reason. I think their talent matches up with anybody in the league this season, and it's just a matter of them putting it all together. I did detail their pathway to the NCAA tournament on a recent post on Big5Hoops.com. In fact, I think it's the most recent post through a Big 5 mailbag, so you can check that out. Speaking of Big5Hoops.com, I have a litany of stories lined up for a Big 5 preview. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get to all of them, but I have a lot planned, so stay tuned for that. I will have you set for the Big 5 season, Drexel, LaSalle, Penn, St. Joseph's, Temple, and Villanova. I've already done several interviews and many more to come up ahead. So really excited about the preview package I'm looking to put out, and I really hope you will check it out at Big5Hoops.com. And thanks to all who follow my work, who follow me on social media, who interact with me. It's really appreciated because I do put a lot of time and effort and energy into this. It is fun to do, but without having anyone read your work or interact with you, it would be a little deflating. So I really appreciate everyone who does read my work, follows me here, interacts. And I try and find the right mix between, getting things out and maybe overly putting things out. So thanks for bearing with me as well if I cross that line. Sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what to do and where that line exists. So just want to run through a couple more things. I've been through 15 minutes so far. Maybe go another 15. We'll see how I can get through my notes. Maybe I'll just quickly scroll through some things that I noted as I was going through the press conferences. Davidson started off the day today. They were picked 12th out of 15 teams, but Coach Matt McKillop is actually very high on the team. One thing that he likes is they're returning 4 starters, very veteran team, and in today's college basketball where the rosters are turning over, there's a lack of continuity. He thinks that's going to be a huge advantage, and his direct quote is, we believe we have an opportunity to do something special. So perhaps keep an eye on Davidson as a potential dark horse in the Atlantic 10. After Davidson, St. Louis took the podium. Completely new St. Louis team, new coach, new players, of course, led by Robbie Avila, who was one of the stars of the NCAA March Madness last season. I did ask Robbie about a recent injury. He turned an ankle in practice. He is on the preseason all-conference first team, but it sounds like he is going to be okay. He did walk in sneakers today. He said he expects to be okay for when the season starts. So really high hopes at St. Louis. Scrolling through to see what they said. Josh Schertz, the new coach, said he's been following the Atlantic 10 for a while. He enjoyed watching the conference on Friday nights. He had a pretty good feel for the league. Was always impressed with the league, how good and competitive it was. He thinks the league has been underrated and probably can get more attention, get more teams in the tournament. And he said just from the outside looking in, it's just a basketball league. So really interested to see what St. Louis does this season. St. Joseph's, I believe, plays St. Louis twice this season, home and home. Those will be really big games for the Hawks this year, and really will be pivotal in deciding whether St. Joe's will make the NCAA tournament. After St. Louis, Loyola Chicago came up through Valentine. I did have a chance to talk to Drew before the press conference, just kind of casually chatting. Really was interested in learning more about Justin Moore and how Justin Moore is doing at Loyola Chicago. Justin Moore, of course, transferred from Drexel to Loyola Chicago. Drew Valentine said that Justin Moore brings speed to their backcourt. He's somebody who can create a mid-range shot, especially like late in the shot clock if they need to get something off. He can generate shots for himself and for others, and he brings speed and a lot of shot creation. So sounds like Justin Moore is going to be in the mix at Loyola Chicago. I'm really interested in and looking forward to seeing what he can do. Certainly had some flashes of greatness at Drexel last season. A little bit inconsistent, as you would expect from a freshman. So we'll see what happens in the Atlantic 10. Following those guys, following Loyola Chicago was Dayton, the second choice in the Atlantic 10 this year, coached by Anthony Grant. He's obviously, like everyone else, as in my notes here, says we're excited to be kicking off the season. Pretty much everybody says that. A lot of them say we haven't lost any games yet, we don't have any injuries, so it's easy to be excited at this time of year. But they're going to have to replace Deron Holmes, obviously one of the best players, certainly in the Atlantic 10 and probably all of college basketball last year, an NBA first-round pick. And but they're loaded. They have several really good players, including Nate Santos, who was here today, and one of the best shooters in the league, along with Eric Reynolds. So I did ask those guys about playing St. Joseph's, and they're going to play the Hawks on a Friday night in January on ESPN. Obviously another one of the Hawks' big games this year. It certainly will be a big game for Dayton. And Nate Santos, and I'm paraphrasing, said that he always looks forward to playing St. Joe's. They're always competitive games. Thanks again for everyone who's joining me on Instagram Live as I'm recording this podcast here in Washington, D.C. If you have any comments on Instagram, feel free to drop them in the chat. I can answer them live on the podcast. It's kind of fun to do this on Instagram, and also recording the podcast. I'm a little concerned about the sound, but doing the best I can. It's kind of a cool setup here. It actually is like a cinema. Regal Cinema is right up there. It's kind of like a mall setup, and there's like a side room. It's kind of a neat setup. If you missed it earlier, or if you're listening on the podcast, I gave kind of a tour of the facility on Instagram Live on Monday morning. You can go back to that reel and check it out. But it was a pretty cool setup here. I go back and forth with the press conference setup or the kind of, meet at the table setup. Everything is kind of made for TV now, so I'm used to it. It was nice that there was enough time in between where I had a chance to go up to coaches and players and just chat a little bit off the record, say hello, introduce myself. So I think the spacing and the time they did was really good. The time they spaced it out really well. During the actual interviews, there wasn't a ton of time for questions. I tried to not monopolize the questions, and I usually waited to make sure other people didn't want to ask, but I did want to get questions in, so I think I pretty much got questions in on just about every press conference except a couple. And I did put out kind of a little summary with a picture on my X account at Aaron_Bracy. If you want to check it out, you can go back and see. I did have a lot of interaction today, which is cool, including the new general manager of St. Bonaventure University, Adrian Wojnarowski, aka Woj, which was pretty cool to see. And he reacted to a photo that I took with Jim Crowley, who's the women's coach at St. Bonaventure University. And one of the real thrills today was me getting a chance to meet Jim Crowley. He was one of the 90 people I interviewed for my book on 2003-04 St. Joseph's. And I can't wait for you to read the story and the amazing impact that the 2003-04 Hawks had on Jim Crowley. And he was a great interview when I talked to him on the phone months ago. And today was awesome to talk to. Such a nice man. And I'm really looking forward. I'm going to go watch his team play at St. Joseph. They're playing the Hawks on a Wednesday in January at Hagan Arena. And I told Jim that I'm going to come to that game and I'll probably cover that game for Big Five Hoops, or at least be there to watch the team play, and maybe even we'll have a book by then that I can give them. So that was really cool. I'm gonna take a quick sip of Smart Water. By the way, this is the first time I've ever had Smart Water. I was very curious about Smart Water because I always see Smart Water, at the press conferences for like the major league teams or whatever. I don't know what Smart Water is. I never had it. I drink tap water. I'm fine with tap water. Of course, if someone wants to sponsor this Instagram Live or my podcast with some kind of non-tap water, I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, it's fine. I think it's just water for me, but it does taste good. So after getting back to what I was doing, going through my notes here, after Dayton, UMass came up. Frank Martin and Rashul Diggins. It was really cool. I was really interested to talk to Rashul Diggins, obviously from Philly, from Archbishop Wood. So, the one thing I was trying to get a feel for the Atlantic 10 teams, and as I was doing my research for picking my teams, trying to fit UMass was the hardest thing for me. And I didn't have a good feel for UMass. I didn't have a good feel for what they returned. And I ended up picking them, I think, 13th. That was kind of my one sort of glaring discrepancy with the official preseason rankings and my poll. I did put a lot of time and effort into it. I did the best I can with it. It's a lot of work because there's so much turnover in the rosters. But perhaps I ranked UMass too low. Coach Frank Martin seems to be really high on the team. In fact, he said that he thinks that UMass, on paper with their talent, could compete in the SEC and the ACC. So when I heard that, I was like, wow, I think 13th was probably way too low. So we'll see what happens. Certainly no hard feelings against UMass. I did the best that I could with the rankings, and I did my due diligence. But just a lot of turnover, and it's hard to know everything that's going on. But Frank Martin said that we're good, we're big, we're long, and we're athletic. And I'm excited to take on this upcoming season with the guys that we got. One thing that he said UMass is going to focus on this year is their defense. He said they were the number one offensive team in the A-10 last year, but our defense was below standards. He said if I was in the SEC, I think I said ACC before. If I was in the SEC or the Big 12, I'd be really excited to go in those leagues with these guys. That's really high accolades, and so I guess we'll see. We'll see. UMass, what were they picked? They were picked 9th in the preseason poll, so not that far off. I had a 13th. So we'll see what happens. Rashul Diggins was really cool to talk to. He was the most improved player in the Atlantic 10 last year from Philly, Archbishop Wood. I did ask him about facing Justin Moore from Loyola Chicago, transfer from Drexel, and also from Archbishop Wood. And Rashul said, yeah, we've talked, and we'll see him soon, and that's going to be fun. So kind of laughing the whole time. So definitely sounds like he's excited to be playing against his buddy from Archbishop Wood. And I definitely will be tuning in best I can when it's on to that matchup, or at least following it. And also, UMass is going to be St. Joseph's first opponent in Atlantic 10 play on New Year's Eve at Hagan Arena. I will be there. That should be a crazy atmosphere. Assuming the Hawks do what they should do in non-conference, it should be a crazy atmosphere, and it should be a fun game. So really looking forward to that and seeing Rashul Diggins and UMass at Hawk Hill. Thanks again for everyone who's joining me on Instagram Live. I see Susan Parada checked in, Nicholas Tartamosa joined, Lorenzo Liampora. Thanks for following here on Instagram Live. I'm recording a podcast live from Washington, D.C., also sharing it here on Instagram Live. If you have any comments, feel free to drop them in the chat or any questions about Atlantic 10. Just to recap quickly, got up at 3 a.m. today, took a 4:45 train to Washington, D.C. My train home is at 9:15, so I do have some time to record a podcast. Going to put this out tonight. I'm about 25 minutes in. I'm just kind of going through my notes. I'm more than halfway through. I'm going to talk next about Rhode Island. Archie Miller and David Green from Rhode Island were here. Archie Miller is really trying to revitalize Rhode Island. Did not have the best season last season or even in his first year as he's rebuilding the program. But he thinks this is the season where they kind of start to turn the corner. He says they have really high aspirations and goals for this group. One thing he said they have to focus on this year is defense. He said that side of the ball was really a disaster last year. He said, you can put that on me. I desperately want to build a winner. So that's kind of the Rhode Island story. They are picked to finish 11th. It's interesting, though, when you said that about defense, I was thinking about my book. And you'll read about that in March when it comes out, March 1st. Just another plug, you can pre-order the book now at big5hoops.com/asoaringseason. And it's available for pre-order there now. I will ship it to you as soon as it comes out. It should be also going on, well, it'll be in bookstores everywhere on March 1st, 2025, and Amazon, anywhere online where you purchase books, it will be there as well. But you can get you can pre-order a copy now, and will be shipped to you just as soon as it comes. But it was interesting to hear him talk about defense because that Rhode Island team in 2003-04, and I don't want to give too much of the book away, but that team was kind of the opposite. That team was hardcore, physical defense, in your face, rough it up. So I just thought about that as Archie Miller was talking about Rhode Island. After Rhode Island was Ryan Odom. It was really cool. Probably of all the people I talked to today, Ryan Odom was the one that I was able to spend the most time with. I think we chatted probably for 10 or 15 minutes. Really, really nice guy. We talked a lot about his journey from UMBC to Utah State to VCU, and just kind of got to know him a little bit, got to know his team a little bit. Again, I'm doing the best to research. I saw VCU a bunch last year because they played St. Joe's in the regular season. They also played St. Joe's in the Atlantic 10 semifinals. VCU won. So it was really cool to get to talk to him. But yeah, VCU was picked number 1 in the league. They've got a ton of guys coming back. Typical, I'm excited for the season. Ryan Odom really likes the balance that the team has. What else? I'm just looking at my notes here. I also asked Max Shulga, this was an interesting angle. Max Shulga committed in the transfer portal in May to Villanova. I talked to him for a story on big5hoops.com, which you can still read, published on May 3rd. And he decommitted, went back to VCU. So I asked him, what went into the decision to decommit and how does he feel about the decision? And then asked Ryan Odom what he thinks about obviously having Shulga back. And here's what Max Shulga said. He said he just thought he wanted to come back to be in the family environment with the family that he's been for the last 4 years, and he wanted to finish his college career off with them. And also knowing that they have a good team coming back. Those were the factors that went into him going back to VCU after committing to Villanova. And Ryan Odom said, yeah, we're just thrilled to have Max back. We're thrilled that he decided to finish out with us. He's an amazing player and an even better person. Just going to have another sip of my water here. Nicholas Tartamosa on Instagram Live asked, who's my pick to win the A10? Well, so I'll say this. My preseason selection was VCU to to win the Atlantic 10. I did that because I was asked by the league to do a media poll. But I really don't like making predictions because I find that making predictions, I tend to lose the enjoyment of the games when I make predictions because I end up rooting for my prediction more than just kind of enjoying the game. So I lean against making predictions. I certainly think I will say this. Of these 5 schools, I would expect the Atlantic 10 champ, Nicholas, to come out of these 5 schools. VCU, Dayton, St. Joseph's, St. Louis, and Loyola Chicago. And although I did pick VCU number 1 on paper, I think you could probably throw a blanket over those 5 schools. And out of those 5, maybe it's probably, I would say, an even race as to who will come out as the A10 champ. I would expect it to be one of those 5 schools. So, but thanks for the question, Nicholas. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. We're coming down to the home stretch here, which is good because it looks like they're kind of clearing out of here, and I also am going to have a cough, which I hate to do on the air, but have to do it. Give me a second. Okay, hopefully that'll be the last one. Normally I can pause it if I'm at home, but I just kind of, as I said, I'm just ripping this. Didn't have anything planned out. Just kind of going through my notes. Just a few more teams here. St. Bonaventure came up. Mark Schmidt. A lot of the St. Bonaventure talk was actually about Adrian Wojnarowski, a.k.a. Woj, leaving ESPN and joining St. Bonaventure to become their general manager. And here's what Mark Schmidt said about that. He said, "We're really lucky. Woj transformed sports journalism. He loves St. Bonaventure. He has so many relationships that we couldn't have built as a staff in 30 years. And obviously, Woj is going to help them raise money for the collective. Thanks, Voice Report, for joining the Instagram live feed as I'm recording a podcast live here from Washington, D.C., Atlantic 10 Media Day. And thanks to everybody who's joined on the Instagram live. This has been a lot of fun. But yeah, as far as St. Bonaventure and Woj, Mark Smith said it's a home run for St. Bonaventure. It's the most exposure we'll probably get in the next 50 years is what he said that first day when Woj left ESPN and announced he was joining St. Bonaventure. He said it's a grand slam and we're lucky to have him. So certainly I think Woj's presence at St. Bonaventure is going to keep the Bonnies consistently atop the A10 year in and year out. They're certainly going to have the funds. I think he just brings a Q factor, a certain cachet that is going to make people want to be involved with St. Bonaventure in one way or another. Whether it's donating funds to their NIL collective, whether it's backing the Riley Center, whether it's a recruit who is leaning toward another program on St. Bonaventure's level. I think he could put somebody over the top. And also, Mark Schmidt's a good coach. They have a good program. They have a winning program. The biggest thing at St. Bonaventure is sort of overcoming the location. And particularly in the cold of winter, it's a bit of a remote location. But sometimes that's good. Because you go away and you just focus on basketball or focus on school, whatever it may be. And there aren't a lot of distractions. So that does appeal to some people. And certainly looking forward to seeing what happens with Woj and St. Bonaventure. After that, Bernadette McGlade, the A10 commissioner, took the podium for a press conference to give kind of a state of the league. It's some good news and some not so good news. St. Joseph's. The Atlantic 10 is losing a charter member after this season with UMass, and that's a tough blow to the league. UMass has been so great for the league, and the league has been great for UMass. 1996, UMass went to the Final Four, and I think in many ways, Temple and UMass put the Atlantic 10 on the map. The Atlantic 10 obviously gave those schools a platform to do so. So it's sort of sad for the league, and Bernadette McGlade mentioned this, that it is sad that UMass is leaving, that Temple's not, she mentioned Temple, I'll mention Temple, that Temple's not in the A10, but it comes ultimately for UMass, and it really came down to football, and finding a conference where they could play football and still basketball, similarly to Temple. I've kind of said my piece on the Temple thing, so I'm not going to go back into it. You know how I feel about it. if you don't know how I feel, you can scroll through some old tweets. I don't want to sort of beat a dead horse on that. But similarly, Temple is not in the Atlantic 10 because of football. One thing I did ask about was, what's the state of the conference? Are they going to expand? After UMass leaves, they'll be down to 14 teams, which is still a healthy conference, but we're seeing conferences expand. We're seeing conferences getting poached. The one thing the Atlantic 10 has going for it is a basketball league. So most of the movement is with football schools. The one thing that maybe it doesn't have going for it is because it doesn't have big time football, you're kind of left, sort of out of the big table conversation for the big money TV packages. However, one interesting thing, and Bernadette McGlade noted this, is that there's a pending court case, and it's very complicated. It's been through Congress, through court. I think it's been appealed, and I haven't been following it that closely as of late. But the basic idea is there's a congressional bill, as I understand it, that is going to give each school a certain amount of money to pay players. Players would then more or less be considered employees. And also, I think NIL would still stay as a supplement. I think this would make it less of a wild, wild west situation. The one thing the Atlantic 10 has going for it is that they do not have to worry about sort of a Title IX situation where football is going to have, I don't know, how many scholarship players are on football? 50 male scholarship players? So now you're going to have to spread out 50 scholarships evenly, as you should, by the way, for female sports, which is going to spread thin the money that schools have to pay. Whereas without football, you're going to take that slice of the pie, and now you have it to spend how you want. And if you have more money to spend on basketball than, I was going to say Arkansas. That's a really bad example because John Calipari just went there. He's going to have oodles of NIL money. Then say Auburn. Say Auburn. Auburn's going to put its resources into football. They're going to use what they have left over for basketball. As I understand it, that's how it will work. So maybe A10 could be a bigger player in this new system. Bernadette McGlade seemed to indicate that, and we'll see how that all plays out. One thing that I really liked that she said was she talked about the non-conference schedule, and I really felt strongly about this last year when I looked at the A10's non-conference schedule, and I was wondering, why is the A10 not getting multiple bids into the NCAA tournament as it was accustomed to getting, when other conferences like the Mountain West is getting, 6 bids last year from the Mountain West? And is the Mountain West that much better of a league than the Atlantic 10? I don't think so. But the resumes are, because of scheduling. You have to schedule in a way that's going to not just get your teams into the conversation, but get your league into the conversation. And Bernadette was very direct about this. And here's her direct quote: "I love the look of our non-conference schedules. When you're feeling like you're going to be an at-large selection, you have to schedule that way. Collectively, it's critically important to win games in non-conference." I think the league has done that this year. I have not looked intimately at every league schedule, to be honest. But just looking at St. Joseph's schedule and some others, the Hawks have a really good non-conference schedule with plenty of quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities, notably Villanova, which is always there in the Big Five. They're going to play Texas Tech, potentially Texas or Syracuse. They're going to play Virginia Tech, Princeton at home. I think I'm missing one. I don't have the schedule in front of me. It's in my folder there of notes, but I just am kind of riffing here. I want to get through my podcast. I'm already 40 minutes in, which is fine. Maybe someone's going to want to listen to this on a long walk tomorrow, so I appreciate you taking the time. And if you have any questions on Instagram Live, feel free to drop them in the comments, and thanks for everyone who's joined me there. Definitely will do it like this again. This has been a lot of fun. But after Bernadette, let's scroll down and see who is next. Drew Joyce from Duquesne. Very interesting what's happening at Duquesne this year. They obviously made the NCAA tournament last year, surprise run to the A10 championship. where they upset VCU in the final in Brooklyn. Drew Joyce took over for Keith Dambrot, who retired after the season. They also lost their 2 leading scorers. So while on paper, well, not on paper, while Duquesne got some more attention last year, and to a casual fan might, after seeing them in the NCAA tournament, might pick them again to do well, on paper, it looks like this is going to be a drop-off year for Duquesne with the changing coach. And not that Drew Joyce can't coach, but just the changes in the program, losing their 2 leading scorers. But Drew Joyce seemed optimistic. He likes the direction they're heading. I like what he said. If someone asked him if he's settled, he said, I don't ever want to be settled. It reminded me a little bit of Jalen Hurts, but I like the way he said it. I like the mentality. Like, I don't think you ever, I agree with that. Like, I don't think you ever want to settle, because, like, if you settle, and Eric Dixon from Villanova said this to me too. He's like, hey, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, kind of thing. So you always want to kind of be looking to improve. I love that. He said the best advice he's got as a first-year coach is from his dad, and that's just to be who you are and not anything else. And that's great advice. Just be who you are. I try to be myself, flaws and all, and it's great advice for all of us. So it's really cool to hear that, and he said that's what he's going to strive to do. I asked him, like, what do you expect? Like, kind of, what can you expect out of this team because of all the changes? The team is picked to finish 8th in the Atlantic 10, and where would you expect the team to land? And he said, we have a new team, we have new players, but here's what I can give our fans. We're going to be relentless in our approach. We're going to try to be the most competitive team, and we're going to try to be unselfish. They're going to identify with our hustle and with our discipline. So I like that he's focusing on things that you can control. You can't always control outcomes, but you can control input. You can control how hard you work, how competitive you are, how unselfish you are. And I think as you're going to find out when my book comes out, for those of you who have pre-ordered, thank you. And for people who are going to purchase it in bookstores or at book signings or later on. And again, you can find the book at big5hoops.com/soaring-season. I think you're going to find that was a large part of what made St. Joseph successful in 2003-04. After that was Fran Dunphy. We already touched on Fran. I do want to point out that I did talk to both LaSalle women's coach, Mountain McGilvery. I don't think I said his name correctly. Let me look at my chart here. And St. Joseph's coach, Cindy Griffin. And I did ask them both about the playing in the new Big Five Classic. Thanks to Matt for joining. He's still on. Matt's website is a great resource for St. Joe's fans. His Twitter feed, Hawk Hill Hardwood, is a great resource for St. Joseph's fans. He does spaces. I think he has one coming up next week. I actually usually try and tune in because I learn a lot from Matt about recruiting, and just kind of like to hear what he has to say about St. Joe's. But I did ask both the LaSalle women's coach and Cindy Griffin from St. Joe's about Mountain McGilvery is the LaSalle coach, about playing in the Big Five Classic, and then they're going to use the same setup as the men used last year with the pod system. Their triple header is going to be on a Friday night at Villanova. They're very excited about it. I think it's going to bring a little more buzz. St. Joseph's is coming off, women are coming off a season in which they won a school record 28 games. But Cindy Griffin said one thing they did was they upped their schedule, make it a little bit more competitive. So we'll see how they do. I'm going to quickly run through. My phone here is at under 20%. I only think I have a couple more. Chris Mooney from Richmond followed LaSalle. Richmond lost like 57 points of their scoring. They have a lot to replace, so I did ask Chris Mooney, like, how's he going to do that? And he said that, there are a lot of guys that are learning, that want to get better every day, including Delani Hunt, who was there. He's the returning leading scorer. I like what Delani Hunt said. He said, yeah, we have to step up. But he says, I'm not going to say my specific job is to score. I just have to do what the night calls for. I'm going to do what the game tells me. And that's a great attitude. And quite frankly, it reminds me a lot of Jameer Nelson in 2003-04. A lot of the stories I heard about here. So that was risky. We have a little hand truck coming through here, so sorry about the volume. Just going through the door. Billy Lang from St. Joseph's already talked about. And lastly, Tony Skin from George Mason. He was the last press conference. I was kind of zoning out a little bit, but he says that they're super excited what they can accomplish in the second season. He wants to maintain more poise. I missed one press conference. That was Fordham. Sorry, Fordham. At that time, I needed to take a break and have something to eat. It's been a long day. I was trying to find my second win, which I found. But I'm just looking forward to getting home, saying hi to my wife and kids, and getting some rest. I have a lot on the horizon, though. Very, very exciting week for me. Being here, have some interviews this week, which I'll tell you more about. Nicholas Tartamosa says you touched on Duquesne's season last year. Are there any A-10 teams capable of making? Oh, that's a great question. Any teams making noise, capable of making noise in March? Yeah, for sure. The key for the Atlantic 10 teams is getting in the tournament. I think usually when they get in, they usually fare pretty well, but the resumes haven't been there to get into the tournament. But I think for sure this year, and of course I want to see more of the national picture, but St. Joe's, I think they can make a run in the tournament. Guards are great in college basketball, especially in the NCAA tournament. Guards control the game. St. Joe's has, with Xavier Brown and Eric Reynolds II, has a great backcourt. I think they could probably match up with just about anybody in the country. I would think those two could fare just fine. And so I think St. Joe's could make a run. VCU, Dayton, Loyola Chicago. Not quite as sure about St. Louis. Like I said, on paper they look good. They had Robbie Avila, who was sort of one of the stars of the tournament last season for Indiana State, already proved what he could do. So, yeah, Nicholas, I think any of those five teams potentially could make a run. If there's a candidate, a dark horse candidate, I have to wait and see in the Atlantic 10 because on paper, I don't see another team outside of those five being able to do much damage in the NCAA tournament. But we shall see because there's been so much turnover. It's sort of hard to know that until you kind of see how it all looks. So thank you, Nicholas, for your question. Thank you to everyone who joined. 47 minutes, a little longer than I expected, but that's okay. I do want to remind everyone that you can find me. The website is big5hoops.com. big5hoops.com/soaring season for to pre-order my book on 2003-04 St. Joseph's, and also to just read more about it if you'd like to learn more. Hashtags on social media are hashtag Big5Hoops, hashtag Philly Sports, and hashtag 0304 St. Joe's book. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and X at Aaron, AARON_Bracy. You can find me on Facebook, Bracy Sports Media. And yeah, I think that's enough for now. LinkedIn, I'm there too. And I usually have some exit music. I don't have the music today because I'm doing the Instagram Live on my phone. So I just want to thank everybody for joining me today. Thank you for following all my coverage. And I look forward to talking to you all soon when I'm home back in Philly. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great day.